Welcome to Threads of Enlightenment, a podcast devoted to helping you overcome challenges in your life that prevent you from becoming the best version of yourself. Each episode features interviews with people from all walks of life about their journey of self-development and the principles they utilize to overcome their fears to achieve their desired outcome. Ready to be enlightened? Here's your host, Ken Primus.
Welcome to another episode of Enlightenment, and you guys know this is one of my favorite space right here. It's the opportunity to welcome our guests. I know that they're coming with a couple of things I personally deem very expensive. That is their time. 24 hours, man, has been given and offered to every single man and woman on this planet. And Professor has chosen to spend some of that precious stuff with us here. And so we want to honor him and thank him for that choice that he has made for us today on behalf of us. The other is the journey. The journey is a powerful creator. It has created him, and it has deposited a couple of things inside of him that we want access to today. Those ingredients that are present within Professor's life and his being is wisdom, knowledge, insights. We want to pull at that stuff. Why? Because we want to learn, and so that we can grow and become effective while we're here on this planet Earth. Professor, welcome to Threads of Enlightenment, and thank you so much.
Well, Ken, thank you so much for having me on your great show, and I really appreciate your listeners' time as well.
Thank you. One of the things that I tell people that the guests, when they show up, I don't look at anything as just happenstance. Everything to me, I've learned that is a divine appointment, is an appointment to it. Someone from the audience, Professor, has made a demand, and you are that individual that is here to give credence, give the answer to those individuals that has made the demand. And so that's why I want to thank you so much and welcome you. The other thing that I always ask the guests on the onset is, how do you serve mankind? And I ask them this just not for the guests much, because what they are going to tell us is how their assignment that they have on this planet, but it's for the listeners, for those that are tuning in, that this journey on this planet is not just about you. We have the interdependent part of the journey that is so beautiful. And so my question to you, Professor, is how do you serve mankind?
Wow, to me, I look at it in several different ways where I get to serve others. One is I run a interior landscaping business that employs 20 individuals. And so they get to make income from the business and be able to have flexibility in their lives, because we target basically a lot of working moms who have a few hours a day that they want to work while the kids are in school, let's say, and gives them an opportunity to earn some additional income. So that's one way. It's called Office Plants by Everything Grows, and so I've
Nice.
been the owner of that business since 2005. And one of the nice things too is that it, in addition to being able to have the employees that they can get the income there, the customers get the benefit of live plants. And live plants are something that when you have live plants in your office environment, it has been clinically proven by many, many different research studies that show that plants help reduce stress in the workplace. So it's, we have hundreds of customers, and so the impact that has can mushroom as well. So it's fun from that standpoint. I've also served as an adjunct professor of marketing for several universities, and I've helped inspire hundreds, if not thousands of students to develop and apply their key concepts of marketing specifically to their area of interest by creating a marketing plan. And I've had a lot of different students who've actually started businesses or gotten promoted, etc., from the work that they did in class. So that's been very rewarding. I'm also a TEDx speaker that with my talk getting thousands of views now. So the impact can be far-reaching with that. Also a best-selling author on reducing stress in your everyday life, as we're going to talk more, I'm sure, about that, because unfortunately I learned the hard way that trading your health for your career is a very bad trade. Lastly, but certainly not least, I also do volunteer work supporting the causes and organizations that I believe in, including running laughter yoga classes in my community and performing improv comedy to help my community laugh more and stress less. So those are the ways that I'm trying to impact my my world, I'd say.
Yeah, laughter is as they say, laughter is good medicine.
Yes.
And being in healthcare, I have studied data and I've seen patients that recovered because of laughing. And I remember reading about a family that shut all the crazy doctors out and everyone out, except for a few. And he had his family bring all of his favorite comedy shows and stuff. And the man got healthy, walked out of the room, man. So it does tremendous amount of things to us on a cellular level. So those of you
Absolutely.
who are stressed, one of the most powerful things that you'll ever introduce in your life is laughter. So get yourself some tapes, find your favorite movies, whatever, however, start laughing, and I promise you, do it consistently. Um, and it will manifest an outcome. Trust me on this. How do you feel about that, Professor?
I 100% agree. There's 40 clinical studies all over the world indicating the power of laughter. And the other thing is that what's really interesting, so the probably the secret sauce to laughter yoga, which started in 1995 by Dr. Kataria in India.
Mhm.
Basically, the secret sauce to it, for those listeners, think about when you do a hearty laugh and how good that feels. What happens is that when we laugh for at least 5 to 6 seconds, what ends up happening is that our body releases positive endorphins that gives us those health benefits. Now, as smart as our bodies are, you know how they can fix themselves. As smart as our bodies are, they don't know the difference between a real and a simulated laugh.
Mm-hmm.
Only knows that we're laughing. So what happens is in the laughter yoga classes, what we do is we do simulated laughing activities. And when we do that, the fact is that laughter is contagious.
Yes.
And so if we start doing a forced laugh for a few seconds, what ends up happening is most people will start laughing for real. And then you get the real positive power that happens within a class. And it was interesting too, because when I did my TEDx talk, I actually did a laughter exercise. And TEDx was saying, oh, you're not supposed to do that because they don't want, the camera's on me. It wasn't on the audience. So they didn't want to have something that is utilizing the audience. And I said, no, I have to do this. I have to do this exercise. And so many people from the audience after my talk came up to me and said, that was a fabulous exercise you did. Thank you. And the thing is that what we teach in laughter yoga is activities that people can do on their own. It's real powerful to come to a class and laugh with others because, again, you get that contagious laughter. But that doesn't mean you can't laugh on your own. And all it takes, again, is just a few seconds to have some positive benefits.
Yeah, I remember I was in a stadium, thousands of people, and the speaker just started laughing. He just got on stage and started laughing. And so everyone's initially just looking at him, and his laugh had components of it that just made you want to laugh. And so he's just laughing. And then you'll hear people on the other side here and there just beginning to crack up because of those components and stuff like that. And you'll see people that were serious. I mean, I'm talking about an entire stadium, Professor. Within about 10 minutes, 10, 15 minutes, the entire stadium was in a just laughing. People are on the floor, rolling in their seats. It just became infectious. I've
Hmm.
watched that change the state of an entire stadium with one man coming in front of the stage. And all he did when he walked on the stage was started laughing. And within 30 minutes or so, people were still laughing. He couldn't continue. He allowed the wisdom of that man to allow people to laugh for an entire speech. I think it lasted somewhere about 45 minutes. Everyone came
Wow.
out of there. You could see the change in their state as a result of this man coming on the stage. Did nothing but began to laugh. And I know for me personally, it changed much in me because I kept laughing even after I left the stadium because it had just gotten into me, and I had so many concerns as a young dad. All of it was gone. All of it was
Did
gone in 45 minutes, and what began to happen in my life, things began to change as a result of that encounter.
And I imagine that when you left, because for 45 minutes, a whole crowd of people laughing, you really, I'm assuming you felt like you actually had a pretty good workout as well, didn't you?
Yeah,
Because,
yeah,
laughing,
all
I
of
mean,
that comes into place.
it
The
does. And
diaphragm, you're using all kinds of stuff. Yeah,
yeah, it's
it's a
something.
powerful
And
exercise.
it is. And you know what's sad is that so many people, adults, they look at somebody laughing for no reason. They think there's something wrong with that. And the reality is,
Yeah,
when we were kids, before we started getting inundated with responsibilities, as kids,
program.
yeah, programmed exactly. We typically laughed 100 times a day. As adults, with all of our responsibilities, if we laugh 5 times a day, that's a lot. That's a lot. So, and most people, if they can get even one laugh a day, that's a lot. And so the reality is, if we can get out of our mindset of thinking, okay, we're laughing for no reason, because, okay, yes, if somebody tells a joke or if you put a funny video up, yeah, you're supposed to laugh for that, but laugh for no reason? Who does that? And that's, what I
Hmm.
always mention to people is when
Yeah.
they come to a laughter class, is plan to do it twice. Plan to come twice, because the first time you're going to be in your head thinking, oh, wait a minute, what's going on here? I don't know if I'm any number of things. Like I've had people who come into the sorry, I hear something in the background there, but
No, go ahead. Don't worry about it. It'll come out. It'll
okay.
take that out.
So I've had people who come and classic, they'll sit there and they'll say, you know what? I can't laugh as good as that person. So they're competing with each other. So I always tell them,
Yeah.
I'm a professor. No, I'm not grading your laughter. I also say, you don't have to laugh out loud. You can smile, you can chuckle, you can giggle, you can do whatever it is. Participate as much or as little as you want. And if you can get out of your head and just enjoy the process, that's where the magic will happen.
Yeah. And I encourage all of you guys, man. I'm telling you, this is for someone. This stuff is for someone. Usually, because we have changed the format of my show, um, and I usually go with things when I'm led. And this is for someone that is out there. Could be many of you, to understand the importance of laughter. If you just start, if you're home by yourself or the kids are all gone, some single moms, single parents, just start with ha, ha. Start like that. Don't, and then just just put the mind aside as far as the thoughts that will come and say, oh, that is foolish. Yeah, it's beautiful though. Just keep moving. Keep moving. Don't listen to that thought. You actually have a choice. You don't have to listen to that choice. You put it
Right.
aside. Say, not now. I want to try this. And allow yourself to go beyond the first couple bars, if you will, of the laughter. And just to see what happens. And I promise you, it will become very infectious in your being, and you will change your state instantaneously once you allow it to happen. Once you allow it and surrender to the process, as Professor is talking about, it will bear you fruit. And the thing about it is that the results are quick. It manifests right away. You'll see it,
Yes.
you'll feel it in your body, you'll feel it in your mind, your state. You will get a degree of clarity with that particular situation that you have. It is a powerful state to be in. And so, those of you that have tuned in, welcome. We want you to laugh. You could stop the interview and laugh. And none of us, Professor or myself, are not going to be angry with you. We'd be like, yeah, that's what we would love for you to do. And allow yourself to roll on the floor and get into it, man, and get the benefits of it. It is really some good stuff. So
It is. And
I
Ken, you
want
mentioned one.
go ahead.
Sorry to interrupt, but you mentioned one really
Go ahead.
important point too about the fact that starting with like a ha, or so when we do either ha ha ha, ho ho ho, he, what that does is that's telling our body that we're laughing as well. And so one thing that one can do as a practice is, instead of just doing ha ha ho ho ho, what you can do is you can sing a song that you know, but instead of using the words of the song, you can actually use ha 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 ho 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 he. Like, for example, the happy birthday song. So instead of saying happy birthday to you, you can do ha 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 ho 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 ha ha he ha 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 ho 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 he. Something like that, which takes what, 10 seconds, 12 seconds, and actually you feel it inside
Hmm?
of your body because your body's thinking you're not singing, you're laughing. And so it's a very simple thing that one can do. You don't have to, you can do something that inside of yourself. You don't have to try and say, okay, am I doing it right or not? Just do it. That's all you have to do. Just do it. And get out of your head. Don't worry about it. It's going to seem strange. I've recommended to people who might be stuck in traffic, for example, and you know what? Just laugh it off. You're stuck in traffic. If you think that somebody's
Yeah.
going to think you're weird, how do you know if someone sees you laughing in the car next to you? They don't know if you're talking to somebody on the phone. They don't know if you're listening to something on the radio funny. They have no idea. Just let yourself enjoy it.
Yeah, and one of the things, don't take ownership of all those thoughts, man. Don't take ownership. Once you agree with the thought, then you have taken ownership with it and it'll bear
Yeah.
fruit. Don't take it. It's just like another thought. Just put it aside. I would say to myself, when I was doing my meditation and learning about my thoughts, I would say to that thought that would come, and they came a million miles a minute, not now. I don't give you permission to grow right now. Put you aside and just continue to do what you do. And I'm telling you guys, introduce laughter in your life. It'll change your life. There's a science behind it, and it goes all the way down to a cellular level, which will come and change your state, which will change behavior. There's a science behind it. Trust us, and introduce laughter into your life. So now, Professor, how we do this thing here at Threads of Enlightenment. I
There we
love
go.
it.
I
We're
got the
already off
laugh.
script. Yeah, I know, man. We go back in time because I tell people we are given birth back in our young days. we have our natural birth, but also we are given birth spiritually with some trauma. And it could be a benign thing. It could be, and I've said this example before, mom and dad busy just doing some stuff, and a young individual comes to mom and dad and say, hey, look what I've done and this and that. And they're so happy, and mom and dad are truly busy, not being present. They turn and say, we're not now, we're busy. And that individual will receive that as rejection. And based on that perception, that child is going to begin to form certain mindsets and beliefs and stuff like that. But mom and dad didn't mean it. They were just not present. And that's the problem with most of us. We haven't learned how to live there in that state of presence. So one of the ways that why we go back is to examine what was your family unit like. There you have mom and dad, and you have siblings if you're lucky. But how did you grow up once you visited your very first state that you reside in for a little while? We call those little while years. What was your family like?
Oh boy, mine was extremely dysfunctional, sadly. In fact, if you were to look in the dictionary definition of dysfunctional, extremely dysfunctional family, you would see a picture of my family. Basically, my parents combined had 9 marriages, 7 divorces, and 1 widowing. And I have one sibling, a sister, an older sister, and she's the product of my parents' first marriage. I'm the product of my parents' second marriage. So they were married and divorced twice. And so I have a 100% blood sibling that is from a different marriage. And it's, that alone is a dysfunctional badge of honor, to say the least. Unfortunately for me, there were a lot of different times early on, 6, 7 years old, where the parents were not present. Alcoholism was a big deal with them. And my father was a manic depressive as well. So he had a difficult time really trying to be involved, even after they got divorced for the second time. My mom was, for the most part, when I was growing up, more interested in dating than was being a parent. So the rejection was a huge thing for me because, I basically had to become a parent, an adult, way before my age. And what really took a long time for me to recover from was the fact that I didn't really have much of a childhood opportunity. I had to always take responsibility for taking care of others, including my drunken mom. And I had step siblings that were into various drugs as well. And so what it did do for me is it taught me that I didn't want to end up like that. And so what I did was I tried to ignore as much as possible what was going on. The problem is that once I became an adult, I never learned how to deal with those various states of rejection, and it just continued to churn inside of me. And it kept on building inside of me, and the stress of that kept on building inside of me. And it wasn't until my first real medical issue happened back in 2008, actually. I was in my mid-40s, and I started losing weight rapidly. And I ended up losing 30 pounds in 30 days. At first, I thought it was fantastic because I wasn't doing any dieting. I wasn't doing any special exercise, just my normal exercise. And I was eating whatever I wanted.
It's beautiful, isn't it, Doc?
And the weight kept on coming off. And I was thinking, this is fantastic. I haven't lost weight since my early 20s, right? And then after the 30th pound came off, I thought, I better have this checked out. And it came back as I had stress-induced diabetes. The crazy thing is, because I didn't know how to deal with my stress, I didn't listen to my body about what stress was doing to it. So what I continued to do is I just said, look, I'm too busy. I don't have time to deal with this. Just
Yeah.
give me whatever drugs you need to give me. So first it was glucophage and then it was insulin. So I just said, just give it to me. I don't have time for this. And I continued to burn the candle at both ends for another 10 years until I ended up in the emergency room 1 hour from being comatose and an extended stay in ICU with a severe case of diabetic ketoacidosis. And for the listeners who don't know what that is, basically, my body was eating itself alive because of my stress. And that's nuts. That is absolutely nuts. And the crazy thing is I had gone back to the medical device industry at this point. This is in 2018. And on my second day in ICU, I had a micromanager boss. And this boss texts me at about 6 a.m. And mind you, before I tell you what this person texted me, they knew that I was in the ICU. They knew that I had been in the ER. And what the text said was, you have a webinar you need to run at 8 o'clock this morning. What are you going to do about it? And I'm thinking to myself, well, I'm in the ICU. I don't have my work laptop with me. Yes, I do have my phone. And so instead of just saying, go fly a kite, I started trying to reschedule that webinar. So I was pushing the envelope on my phone. And at the time that I was admitted to the ICU, my blood sugars were so high that the medical grade glucometers could not read them. They just said it was high. The lab in the hospital had to manually estimate, and they estimated my blood sugars to be 8 to 10 times higher than normal. That's why I was almost comatose. And so by the second day in ICU, my blood sugars had come down at least where the glucometer could read it.
Yeah. Wow.
So, but it was still high. And as I was sitting there trying to reschedule this webinar, the nurse on staff at that time comes over to take my blood. They were checking my blood every half an hour to an hour, so you don't really sleep in ICU.
Yeah.
And she takes the reading, and like a 90-degree angle, it shot straight back up, my blood sugars. And she says, just a matter-of-factly, she says, you realize that's what put you in this hospital bed in the first place. And that was the epiphany moment I needed to hear. That was the game changer for me in my life. I realized at that point that I was trading my health for my career, and that was a very bad trade. And the thing was that my family members had told me this, my close friends had told me this, but it went in one ear and out the other. But when somebody who basically was a stranger, who didn't have any reason to tell me anything else, just mentions this to me, I finally said, oh my gosh, what am I doing to myself? And if I continue to go down this road, I'm not going to be around to meet my future grandchildren. And that's the big moment for me. I realized I have to change. And so I spent the rest of that day just really contemplating everything, finances, my career, etc., and decided I have no choice. I have to take care of myself. For the first time in my life, I had to focus only on myself. And so I did. And I started, after I got out of the hospital, I resigned. I resigned directly to my boss's boss because I didn't want to talk to the micromanager anymore. And I decided, you know what, I'm going to focus on trying to reduce my stress. And so I started applying all these different tools and techniques. Many of them worked, some of them didn't. But what I noticed was that as I was utilizing different tools that worked for me, not only did my stress go down, but my glucose numbers as a diabetic went down, my weight went down, and my energy level went way, way up. It was as if I had discovered kind of like a fountain of youth. And the crazy thing is, you see what I look like right now. If you saw a picture of me from 2008 when I was first diagnosed with stress-induced diabetes, and you look at me now, other than a little bit more gray hair on my head, I actually look younger today than I did in 2008. That is what stress does to us. It ages us rapidly. And especially when we're letting ourselves get stressed out by the types of stress that fester inside of us. That is just a killer for us.
There are diseases that I've seen, Doc, as an individual who's been on this planet a little longer than some
Mhm.
and worked in the healthcare field, that is tied directly into our trauma. And when someone sees it or gets that revelation, as they say, that, hey, this is tied into that, and when they begin to address it, I've seen cancer heal. I've seen extreme arthritis where the limbs are, just like this. I've seen it
Mm.
straighten up. I've seen people get healthy. I've seen so much once an individual recognizes that some of their trauma, which is stored emotions that we did not understand how to process as young individuals when this began to happen. And when we are on the journey, we get an opportunity to learn to see it and then process it out of our body, our being. And as we
Right.
process it out of our being, things begin to happen. As you were stating in your life, stress is a classic external expression by the body that something is going on and needs addressing,
Yes.
however that manifests. And so, all of you, that stress is a common thing in our human existence because of the pressure that we have put on ourselves by ourselves. I mean, the
Mm-hmm.
job will put certain pressure on you, that's what they do. But you are that buffer, and if we haven't learned boundaries, we don't know how to set up those boundaries, and then we take like your boss. In your situation, you didn't know how to boundaries to say to him, I'm in the ICU. Don't matter how sick that boss' mind is, but because you had no boundaries, you started to figure out a way how to reschedule and to allow
Yeah.
all this stuff to go on while you're there. But it was beautiful because then you got a chance to witness the root cause of your whole situation. And once you saw the root cause in corporate America, if you do root cause analysis, which you did, began to do the root cause analysis about your whole life and profession and all that stuff. And then once you made your decision from that root cause analysis, you then put into plan. As you said, you brought in some of those tools. What were some of those tools that began to work for you? Because we know that there are millions and billions of people that are suffering from stress. What did you bring into your space to assist you? You said that there are some that didn't, and some that did. And I always tell people, grab the ones that work for you. Discard the ones that don't. You don't need that because it's not working. Find the
Right.
one that's working and go with it. So, what were some of those that you found that worked for you to manage your stress?
Well, there were several that worked right away for me. One was gratitude, having gratitude for what I have. So that has morphed into a nightly routine that my wife and I do, where either she asks me or I ask her, "What are you grateful for today?" And when she asks me, my first answer to that is, "I'm grateful for my health because all else is secondary, because I lost my health and I've got most of it back now. And so I'm very grateful for having my health because the reality is health and time, you mentioned time earlier, Ken. Health and time are our two greatest assets.
Mhm.
And with our health, hopefully we can get it back. We might not, but when we don't have our health, nothing else matters. And the reality is if the listeners thinking about, oh, that's not, health isn't important. Well, think about the last time that you were really, really sick. If you're honest with yourself, you probably didn't feel like doing anything other than lying in bed. And when all you have the energy to do is lie in bed, what good are you to your career, to your business, to your loved ones? You just don't have the energy. So take care of your health. And so I always start off with, I'm grateful for my health. And so we have our gratitude exercise at night. Another one that's a game changer is if any of the listeners haven't done their personal values work, identifying what your personal values are, your top personal values, that one is very, very powerful. And the reason being is because when you know what your top, let's say your top 5 values are in your career, for example, anytime that you're faced with a challenging decision that could stress you out, you basically run that decision past your top 5 values. And if any of those top 5 values are not in alignment with that decision, you shouldn't make that decision. Because if you go against your personal values, guaranteed you're going to add unnecessary stress to your life because you're not being true to yourself. And so knowing what your personal values are, that is an incredibly powerful one. In fact, to give you an example, I was originally trained in personal values work back in 1995. So boy, it's now almost 30 years ago. Time flies. My top 5 values did not include health back in 1995. It's number 1 on my list now. So it's something to, that our personal values, for the most part, our top 5 personal values won't change dramatically. 1 or 2 might over time, but the others won't, because that's who we are. So know what your personal values are. If you haven't done that, I highly recommend that I could give a link to the listeners for a YouTube video I did on it to walk people
I'll
through
provide
it.
that to them as well.
Yeah, so that's a really important one. Another one that I like to do is visualization. So it's a very simple 1-minute exercise where you ground yourself. And what I do is I just go ahead and I think about my happy place, whether that's the beach, park, a lake, your backyard, whatever it's the place that you like to go. Could be, favorite chair, whatever it happens to be. And then you take in all of your senses as you are visualizing that. And the reason why you want to take in all of your senses is because that makes it real for your body.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's
and
the
so
engine.
Absolutely. So visualization is another one. Of course, we talked about laughter. Laughter is a huge one for me. I use that one frequently. I also like to remind myself whenever I'm dealing with a stressful situation. A classic thing that we do as humans is whenever we're faced with a stressful situation, we tend to stress about all aspects of that situation. But the reality is only some of those aspects are within our control and others are not within our control. The problem is let's say if 50% of our time is spent with what is not in control, that is wasted energy.
Wasted time.
It is wasted time, wasted energy, because guess what? We can't do anything about it. We cannot affect change. When we focus on what we can change, what we can control, then we will naturally reduce our stress. So what I always recommend to people is whenever you've got that stressful situation, if you can, list out 2 lists. One, what you can control, the other, what you can't control, and then ignore the what you can't control and focus all of your energy on what you can control, because that you'll just do yourself a huge amount of favor by doing that. because that's what can make a big difference. Another one is detoxing from technology, because, we are, just so enamored with our electronics. And the problem is especially those of us who feel like we have to answer our messages, at all times of the day or night. Well,
Hmm.
when you're in the evening or on the weekend or on vacation, when you're checking messages, you are not disconnecting from work. And I'm not talking about just, oh, okay, you disconnect when you sleep. It's you need to have that awake time as well, where you're not thinking about work. So it's so important to detox from technology. And it's interesting, when COVID was here, I actually got a much more of an appreciation for restaurants than I did before. I took them for
Yeah.
granted before, but then when I couldn't go to a restaurant, now all of a sudden I can, and I still appreciate that. I like to take in the surroundings, the hearing the
Hmm.
buzz, hearing other conversations. But I always see, no matter what, I almost always see at least one table, if not multiple tables, where the people sitting at the table are all on their phones, just looking at their phones. And I'm thinking to myself, why do you even bother coming to the restaurant? Just get takeout if you're going to do that. But, instead, if you are having dinner, lunch with somebody important in your life, and then you've got your phone sitting there and the phone pings you and you pick up that phone and you're looking at that instead of paying attention and being present with the person on the opposite side of the table from you, what are you telling that other person? You're telling them that your phone is more important than they are. So turn off the phone. Just turn it off and ask the other person to do the same. It's amazing what kind of a conversation that you can have when you do something like that. A few others that work for me, I like an end of day anchor. So my wife, she works at the local hospital. And when she comes home, I hear the door open, and that's my end of day anchor that tells me, okay, whatever I'm working on, I wrap it up because it's time to be present with my wife. So what I always suggest to people, if they want to do an end of day anchor, think of something that works, whether it's turning off your computer, whether it's closing the door to your office, whatever can signal to you something that you can make a habit of it that tells you, okay, I'm done working. That's a really important one, because especially if you're working from home, it's hard to disconnect. It is very hard. So you have to figure out a way to do that. Another one that is interesting, that I think is really important for people to think about, is when we compare ourselves to others and we stress ourselves out. So, you wake up in the morning and you go, it's another day. Okay, well, if you look at the entire history of the earth, there's been probably less than 120 billion people that have ever lived on earth. And today we have roughly between 7 and 8 billion people who live on earth.
Yep.
So the fact that you and I and those other 7 to 8 billion people woke up today means that we won the lottery.
Yeah.
Because we're, 14 out of 15 people who have ever lived on earth are dead. So thinking about it from a lottery standpoint, and this also works for finances as well, because the average income earner, world income earner, makes roughly the average $5,000 US per year. That's the average. So if you make $5,001 per year, you're in the top 50% of the world's income earners. If you're lucky enough to make $50,000 US, you're in the top 5% of the world's income earners. So instead of thinking about, I'm not making enough money, think about what the alternative could be. So realizing that what you have, and going back to the gratitude, is a real mindset game changer, because it's just when we come from a state of lack instead of a state of having what we want, what we need, and being grateful for it, you're just going to forever be in this state of trying to, the classic term that has been used a lot in the US, keeping up with the Joneses, because you're always comparing yourself to someone else. Oh, they have the clothing, or they've got the latest car, or whatever it happens to be. And it's a material thing. It doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. So those are ones, and I use other ones as well, but those are the ones that come directly to my mind one other one that is a real, going back to what you mentioned about having an impact on the world, is random acts of kindness. So every morning I get up, and the very first thing I do, the first minute of my work, I either send an email or a text thanking someone for something they did, or just letting them know I was thinking of them. And the key with that, it takes literally 1 minute. The key with that is not to expect a response, because when we set expectations, we inevitably will get disappointed. Instead, I just send it because I just want to send it. And usually I'll get a response. And, I would think most people will get a response from the kind message that you sent to someone else. When you get that response, consider it the cherry on top of the ice cream sundae, because you're going to get this jolt of energy and positivity that's going to help reduce your stress. And it's also helping to reduce the stress of the person you sent it to. So it's a very small thing, but it can have a big rippling effect.
I hope you guys were, and Professor, I try to encourage my audience, because I know listening is the starting point. One has to listen to and then learn how to transition to hearing. The process of that is switching your focus as you hear and you get data. When you become more focused, and I tell people that everything that Professor just said comes from the realm of the psychologists call that realm the subconscious mind. Religion will call that the soul. And all of our needs and everything, I tell people, the religion will say it's in the heavenly places. Psychologists will say that it's in the quantum realm. And everyone have access to those things. And how we get in there, the only way that one can get into that realm is to shed all of the natural thing, and you go in there in your essence, your pure form, if you will. And then you have access to all of that. Doc introduced to you guys, Professor introduced some tools to help you get to that realm. Talk about meditation. He talked about several other different ways that one can enter into that. Laughter is one of those. Believe it or not, it is one of those tools. He talked about all of those different ways by which he accessed that realm. And once you begin to access that realm, all possibility becomes real. One of the most powerful tools that you'll ever use is gratitude. That was the very first thing that he mentioned. When you begin to become grateful for the things you have, you're opening yourself to receive more. It's incredible how that works. And so learn to be grateful for what you have in your current state. And as you begin to expand, you will gain knowledge and insight. And sometimes it's just an introduction to someone that will change your life and bring you all those desired that you have stored within you. But there's a degree of surrendering that you have to do. We have to learn how to surrender to, some people may say, the universe. Some people will say God. They have to learn to surrender in order to receive, because when we are not surrendering, we are in our ability. When we surrender, we are not in our ability. The professor said there's things you can do, and then there are things that you can't do. When you are in your ability, you can do certain things. But then there's that 50% that he's talking about. I always said to people, if you could have fixed it, you wouldn't have that problem. You wouldn't be in that situation. And so Because you don't have the capability of doing that, that means you have to surrender to someone that has that ability. And when you do that, it's scary. It's outside of your control because the human being is a control freak. It's out of your control. And when it's out of your control, you have to walk this thing they call in religion the walk of faith. You have to go beyond you, and you have to trust your God. And for those who are grew up in a religion aspect, for those who are in more of the psychology field, you have to trust that the universe will bring you your desired outcome. But both parties, whether you're in a religious one or the other one, you got to trust. You have to surrender. And I usually use this example because I grew up in the church. And I remember reading Professor where Jesus Christ was in this garden and he is arguing with his dad because his dad is saying, you got to go to this cross and die for these crazy people out here. And he is in this garden and he's having a conversation with his father. He said, I don't want to do that, man. I don't want to do this. I'm not sure about this. I know we planned it this way, but I'm not sure about this. They were having this conversation to the point where he was sweating blood. I haven't been there yet where I was sweating blood, but I've been in that conversation. I don't know about this. I don't know about this. But then I remember reading a couple lines later on. He says, not my will, but your will be done. And he surrendered. Once we surrender, it is out of our control. Whatever happens, we have to trust that the end result of this is for my best interest. And so all of us have to come there. I don't care who you are. If we read Jesus is one of the pinnacle individuals within the time frame of the human existence. If he had to come there, you and I have to come there as well. And so Professor talked about him coming there. Everyone has to come there and surrender, because if you could have fixed it, you would have fixed it. And so you brought in all these powerful tools. You talked about your wife being in partnership also with you at the end of the day, which is a great practice. Also, I tell people when you get up in the morning, announce what you're grateful for. Find a couple of things. When you go back to bed, announce what you are grateful for that day. Bring in the power of gratitude in your life, and it'll assist you to get things done. And so, as you are moving, you're bringing all these tools in, Professor. What began to happen to you as an individual? Because here you were burnt out, stress killing your body. You began to introduce these tools into your life. What did these tools do to you as an individual? First, in your mindset. Second, what did it do to your body as the resident owner of this house that you're here? What did that begin to do to your body as you began to introduce these tools into your life?
Well, a great question. From a mindset standpoint, I noticed that I wasn't my classic worry, that started going down dramatically. And the reason it did was because I was actually being more present with what was going on in my life. And I realized that this was the time I had to focus on my health. And so that was the priority. So my kids, I still was taking care of them, but it was, my primary focus was getting my health back in order. And then being able to see the physical changes, getting that more energy, losing weight healthy in a healthy way, being able to see that I was taking less insulin because I wasn't stressed so that my insulin or my glucose numbers were going up. Nope, they weren't going up as rapidly. I also wasn't eating junk food because when you're stressed, we tend to crave the junk food. And so that I wasn't eating the junk food. So I was eating healthier because I wanted to, and I didn't crave the junk food. And then just physically seeing myself in the mirror where I'm looking and I'm thinking, wow, I feel like I'm reversing the aging process because I looked so much older 16 years ago. And it's crazy
Yeah.
how these things, and it didn't happen overnight. I didn't all of a sudden look 16 years younger overnight. It happens over time. But your body responds to it because our bodies are so powerful and they're smart. They want to right the ship whenever we are
Hmm.
in some sort of health crisis. And the reality is that our bodies will give us many early warning signs about, that we're
Yeah.
stressed out. And the thing is we have to listen. I didn't, of course, because I was getting a lot of my back was continuously getting locked up, and I was having bursitis in my knees, and these things that what happens is that our body will give us early warning signs, and then if we continue to ignore it, it just keeps up ramping it up until we do take notice. And unfortunately, what finally broke in my body was my pancreas. And the crazy thing is, diabetes does not run in my family. So,
Oh,
I have a distant cousin is the only one that had diabetes. No one else in my family has diabetes or had diabetes because my
wow.
parents are gone and stuff. So,
Yeah.
it's crazy, but that's what we, if we ignore what stress is doing to our bodies, unfortunately, we leave our bodies with no choice but to have them say, okay, we're gonna have to keep ramping it up until you do pay attention to it and try and right the ship.
Let me ask you a question also. How did you, food, because food becomes an important part of this journey as well.
Mhm.
How did you begin to use food, if you will? How did you introduce food into your life as a medicine, as a medical aspect uh, to the body? Because, as I said, it becomes a very important part of it in that journey because now we have to go and do some research. You said you started seeing cravings for certain things and all these different things. How did you begin to look at food? How did you approach all the different types out there and what did you allow in your space to allow the body to use it as a medical medicine, if you will, to begin to heal that process that you're in the midst of?
Yeah, it's a good question. Probably the biggest mind shift, I would say, when it came to food for me. So I grew up hearing that, and from my parents and from others, my friends, etc., that the only way you get protein is through animal meat. And what I found out
Hmm.
was that plants give us far more protein. Certain types of plants give us far more protein than we get
Yeah.
from animals. And the
Hmm.
reality is that those animals, they're eating the protein vegetables themselves. So I wouldn't say a
Yeah.
complete vegetarian, but I came almost exclusively vegetarian. Once in a
Yeah.
while, I might have some chicken or something. But what I did was I started just eating a vegetarian diet, and that made me feel better. It gave me more energy, felt better. I didn't have I didn't have as much inflammation in my body after I did that.
Yep.
So those things really that that was a game changer for me. Hands down, it was a game changer for me. On occasion I would still have a dessert or something, some junky, sugary thing.
Yeah. There's nothing
But
wrong with
that was more as a treat, not as the standard meal I would have like I did when I was stressed out. Because when I was stressed out, I was going for whatever I could get fastest. And so that was, sugary cereal in the morning. That was, a hamburger at lunch and fries at lunch. And that was whatever heavy meal in the evening that I could pick up or I could make, stick in the microwave, let's say. So, and it just, the processed foods, when we eat a ton of those processed foods, that is a killer on our bodies as well. Because,
Killer.
yeah, our bodies don't know, our bodies are still the same bodies that we had during the Stone Age. And, our bodies don't, when we eat something that our bodies don't know what it is, like processed foods,
Yeah.
where does it store it?
Mhm.
As fat, because it doesn't know what it is.
Fat. Yeah.
Yeah, so it
Mhm.
can't use it. And so, so eating those processed foods are just, they're a killer. And in fact, the big diabetes increase in our society primarily came from the 19 processed food came out, because fat was all of a sudden the big enemy to health. Well, the reality is, when you take the fat out of foods, what did those manufacturers do? They had to change the flavor somehow, or had to give it flavor somehow. What did they do? They dumped a bunch of sugar and salt into it. And so
salt.
And it just that started this diabetes increase in society. And it's too bad, because people thought, they were led to believe that fat-free is healthy, and it wasn't. So you just have to be able to,
business of food.
exactly. And the crazy thing too is that there's some, you're from the medical field too. I was shocked as part of the research I did, as I was looking at the different foods, when I was looking at the meat industry, and I found out that one of the big sponsors of the American Heart Association was, yeah, exactly. The cattle industry, or whatever that meat industry is called. And I'm like thinking, wow, it just, yikes. I mean, so you really have to do your own research to figure out, when something sounds too good to be true, do a little bit more research, because trust on something like that. No pun intended in terms of eating, but trust your gut on that, because a little bit of research can enlighten you.
Yeah. Guys, we've kept Professor for almost an hour, a little over an hour, and we haven't even started talking about so much stuff yet. So I know we spent first part of the interview talking about laughter and the importance of it, and I believe that is for several people out there. Please spend time laughing. It'll change your life. Trust us, man, because I know it did for me. The other piece that we talked about is his journey, is all of this piece about stress. Stress is a killer that is merciless, just along with cancer and all the other things out there. But most people don't, we mention it once in a while, burnout and whatever, but it's more detailed than that. In some cases, it's unanswered and unresolved emotional trauma that you need to seek answers to. And then once you get some answers, the process of healing still takes place, because the body still needs to heal. Your subconscious individual, he begins to deal with some of those issues, but the body, Professor talked about introducing food, the type of food, when he began to introduce the plant-based versus meat and stuff like that. And he talked about celebrating with some sweet stuff, whatever. I think it's either Sun Tzu or Confucius that said everything in moderation, including moderation. So you have to, I reward myself sometimes with some candy or some sweet, because it was one of my favorite things to do, eat all kinds of sweet. And so once in a while I'll step out and grab, but it's not every day. And so my fiance keeps me focused on that. She'll allow me to sneak out once in a while and get me some ice cream or something like that. But it's not where I live. It's not where Professor lived. You live with those foods that are designed in its raw form to heal and work in conjunction with your body. And that is the plant-based food that you can extract. There's a video out there of bodybuilders that did all they ate was plant-based food, and then the meat eaters, and they compete, and they showed how strong and how more powerful the plant-based guys are than the meat eaters because of the protein that the body sucks up from the plants and so forth. So do some research on that as well. Professor came from the medical side as far as equipment and stuff. I came from another aspect of it, and we're both telling you, do your research, because that industry is designed to keep you sick. They're not interested in healing you, man. And those that are not, learn boundaries. When your company texts you after 5 o'clock, they don't respect your time nor your boundaries. Shut it down. We talked about detoxing. I call it fasting from those type of things, where you shut it down. Learn to develop boundaries when it comes to your electronics. Make sure that you charge it outside of your bedroom because of the EMF factor that affects the brain and all those different things. So do some research, guys, and change your life. Professor, I want to thank you so much for coming, and we got to bring you back because there's so much more to your to the story. And I said we spend most of it talking about laughter, and I feel that is important for a couple of people, man, because I have never done that on my podcast ever. So something needs to be addressed in some people's life. So we're going to provide everything, the links for you guys to reach him, those assessments that he has about your learning about your values and all those things, ethics. Those things are powerful guide tools, especially when it comes to your life, not just work, but life itself. So we're going to put information for you to get access to him and get into his world. He has books, he has videos, he has all of these different tools and information housed in those things for you guys. Get it, give it as presents, tell people about it, share the links to get into his space so that you can learn and become free from stress. Again, Professor, thank you so much.
Well, Ken, thank you so much for your time, and I really appreciate your listeners' time as well. It's been a wonderful conversation.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to Threads of Enlightenment with Ken Primus. Hopefully you're now feeling more empowered to overcome the challenges in your life, whatever they may be. Share that inspiration with others by telling them about this podcast, rating it, and of course, remember to subscribe so you don't miss a single episode. For more connection, you can find us on Facebook and Instagram by searching for Threads of Enlightenment. Until next time, stay enlightened.